Good evening, and welcome to the Candidates Forum featuring candidates for the Mountain View-Whisman School District Board of Trustees, excuse me. My name is Patsy Duke. I will be the moderator for this session. I am a member of the League of Women Voters, and for Los Altos Mountain View. The other sponsors for this forum are the American Association of University Women and this library, the Mountain View Library.
What number am I?
The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization of women and men established to promote political responsibility through informed, active participation in government. The League does not support, oppose, or evaluate candidates or parties, although our nonpartisanship policy does not permit endorsement of candidates. We do, after careful study, take positions on issues. This will not be part of this particular forum, but it will be in some of the other forums. There is material on the table to your right on different things that the League of Women Voters is currently doing, and we invite you to take whatever way you want. The League invites anyone who's interested in government, politics, and serving the community to join us. We also encourage you to visit smartvoter.org for more voter information. You can find that website address in the material. The format for today's forum will be as follows. Each candidate will make a 2-minute opening statement, and next, the candidates will respond to questions from the audience. Submitted questions should be of a general nature because each candidate will be able to answer every question. Question sorters who are League members and our sponsors will be reviewing and selecting the questions that have been submitted. No questions will be taken from the floor orally. However, there are cards that were given to you when you entered, and you can get more cards from our volunteers. So fill out your questions and raise your hand with the card in your hand, and they will come and pick it up. Because we have to keep track of time, the very limited time that we have, we do have one of our members, Sue Graham, who will be the timekeeper. She will be signaling each candidate when their time is up, and I will enforce those limits. So in the interest of time and decorum, we do ask that no one in the audience applaud or say anything in support of a candidate, but abide by the following ground rules. As I said, all the questions are to be written. Please turn off any electronic devices you have that we all have. If it beeps, chirps, rings, or sings, or it makes any other noise. If any devices are used to record, we ask that the content be shared in its entirety to ensure that any remarks made are not distorted. We will be filming this, or taping this session. KMVT is recording. KMVT is recording, and that will be posted on YouTube. Now I'd like to introduce the candidates who are running for Mountain View-Whisman School District Board of Trustees. Their positions at the table were chosen by their pulling cards from my hand. This does not mean anything. Take no inference from where people are seated. Candidate number 1 is Tamara Becker Patterson. Candidate number 2 is Devin Conley. Candidate number 3 is Ellen Wheeler. Candidate number 4 is Greg forgot his name, Donado. So we are now ready to begin, and we will have candidate 1 give the first opening statement. Tamara? Ms. Patterson.
Good evening, and thanks for coming. I'm Tamara Patterson, and I'm a proud mom of 3 kids, with my oldest entering kindergarten next year. I've been a Mountain View homeowner for over 10 years and was blessed with a great education at Wesleyan University, physics, Caltech, engineering, and UC Berkeley, MBA. And it was my neighborhood public school that prepared me with an excellent foundation. I will be a parent advocate. I want our children to love learning and learn to work hard. Professionally, I lead the customer product group at a startup and am responsible for delivering solutions that customers love. I have 3 priorities: community, diversity, and excellence. Community. With trust and transparency, we can be honest about the needs and aspirations of our community and partner together to address them. It shouldn't be an us versus them, as I heard one parent feel. Diversity. Mountain View has an untapped resource in our diversity. First, we need to acknowledge the diversity and make it a safe place to talk about cultural, socioeconomic, LGBTQ, neural diversity, physical, artistic, and musical capabilities, and the depth and breadth of the human spirit. Our diversity opens our minds, and our community helps us see our similarities. This will prepare our kids for the future. Excellence. I accept nothing less than academic excellence for all, including closing the achievement gap. Our district has made good strides with this hard work, and we can and we must do more. This is why I decided to run. Excellence for all means raising the ceiling to see how far our kids will go and not being surprised when they exceed our expectations. I'm not an educator. I bring a fresh voice and am looking at these hard problems from the lens of someone that stays laser focused on results and priorities and makes decisions based on results and data.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. The second speaker will be Ms. Conley.
Thank you. My name is Devin Conley, and first I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for organizing this event tonight and all of you for coming out. My background as an educator, a classroom teacher, and an education policy researcher make me uniquely qualified to serve on our school board. I believe in strengthening our public schools in our community, and I've been working in education for the last 16 years. I've worked as a teacher in San Francisco and Mountain View and San Jose, and I also worked as a research associate at the Center for Cities and Schools at Berkeley for 2 years, and as a research assistant at the Stanford University School of Education. I have a degree in architecture from Yale. I have a degree in master's in city planning from Berkeley, and a master's in education from Stanford. And I earned my multiple subject teaching credential at San Jose State University. My husband and I moved to Mountain View 12 years ago. We bought our first home, we started a family, and I now have a kindergartner in the district. My priorities for our school board are that we make sure every child in our district has a world-class education. And that means differentiating instruction and really focusing on supporting teachers and seeing what's happening in the classroom. I also believe that we can work so much more effectively if we have a trusting and collaborative relationship between the district and families. And I hope to build on the communication we already have to be able to more effectively serve our students together. I also believe that we need to focus on attracting, supporting, and retaining high-quality talent. I hope that I earn your vote on November 6th, but regardless, I really want to make sure everyone gets out to vote this year. This is an important election. Thank you for coming here tonight and participating in this aspect of democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Conley. Ms. Wheeler?
Thank you. My very first job out of high school was as a volunteer for Project Head Start, the federal preschool program for low-income children and their parents. I've been involved in education ever since. First, I got my teaching credential and taught part-time while my children were little. Later on, I went back to school at Santa Clara University to become a lawyer and mediator. And when my youngest child was in David Franklin's second grade class at Bubb Elementary School, I ran for school board. I've been serving ever since. I believe in my soul that education is the key to success and fulfillment, and that all children deserve a chance at an excellent education. This is why I serve on the board. Because I'm so passionate, I continually educate myself about what's new in education and interact with other education leaders in our county and state. And because I feel so strongly about continuously learning, I meet with every parent, community member, and staff member who asks me, so I can hear their point of view. Research says that the most important factor in a child's success at school is the quality of that child's teacher. We hire some of the best teachers around and pay them nearly the top salaries in the county. What about the factors that impact a child outside of the classroom? We know that parent involvement and parent training are other huge factors in the success of their child. So we encourage that involvement and help train parents. Have you noticed the new buildings going up all around our district? These are thanks to the school bond that you voted for. We used some of that to finally put in a track at Crittenden Middle School. We use our parcel tax so that our children can have the arts, schools, sports, counseling, and project-based learning that enrich their school day. We do all this with laser-like attention to a sound district budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. Mr. Coladonado.
Thank you. Hello. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Excuse me, Mr. Coladonado, you were not here, but we discussed the fact that you will remain seated during this.
Okay. You guys all heard that?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't hear that. Thank you for letting me know. Seems a little bit more personal to stand up, but we can sit. Okay, so I'm Greg Coladonado. I've been on the board for 4 years. I have had students in our district for the last 9 years. Because they've all been at Stevenson Elementary, I've had the opportunity to be in the classroom with them just about every month that school's open. So now I have a 4th grader at Stevenson, a 6th grader at Crittenden, and a 10th grader is now graduated and is at Mountain View High School. My up to the minute experience in the classroom over these years has given me a perspective that's, I think, pretty valuable as a school board member. There's a lot of things that come to the school board that are kind of abstract or general policy sorts of questions, but I'm glad that I've been able to be in the classroom and see my students, my children interacting with their teachers, with their classmates and so forth, and thinking about what we can do as a school board to help them succeed. Soon after my oldest started at Stevenson, I got active with the school district. I was a member of the Parcel Tax Committee at the time. When Measure G, which Trustee Wheeler alluded to, was passed, I was the chair of the Measure G Bond Oversight Committee. The experience of being on these oversight committees gave me a lot of insight into how the school board could operate more effectively. So in 2014, I ran for the school board and was elected. And some of the priorities I brought then are the same priorities I have now: students, staff, and schools. So for students, my current priorities are both to have the best possible science, technology, and education program we can have. This is a board objective that I proposed in February at our retreat, and the board adopted. I'd like to be on the board to see this through to completion, possibly. I'm also very interested in accelerating the English language education we give to our English learners. I think that would help our students in our district more than anything else we could do. I'd like to continue to get the best staff possible and train them to the best of our abilities, and I'd like to see Vargas built and populated next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coladonado. Question number 1. How can the Board of Trustees and the City Council work together to plan for future growth in Mountain View? The first answer should be given by Ms. Conley.
Thank you. So my city planning degree and my work at the Center for Cities and Schools was focused on how city policy and school policy work together. So this is an area that I'm very interested in. I believe that there are opportunities working with the city to increase affordable housing in our community so that we can provide housing for teachers, firemen, police officers, other service workers who take care of our children and families. I also believe that we need to keep working with the city to make sure that when new development happens, there are in-lieu fees and set-asides for school facilities, and that we have a concrete plan to pay for the resources that we need to educate our students.
Mr. Coladonado, would you answer that question, please?
Of course. So this is an area that fortunately the school board's been doing a lot better the last 4 years than they did before. When I first joined the school board and I asked the superintendent, can we have more meetings with the city? We just didn't seem to get that many, but as you may have noticed, our current superintendent is at a lot of city meetings. He speaks at almost every city meeting when there is a item related to development in North Bay Shore or VIew-Whisman. So as Ms. Conley was alluding to, we have been pushing very hard for exactly that, for in-lieu fees or for school set-asides, and I think that the way we've been working together so far on that in the last couple of years has set us up pretty well, and I'd like to see that continue over the next 4 years.
Ms. Wheeler?
Thank you. So I will continue on with what Mr. Coladonado said. Almost all of our board members have attended, I think, every Mountain View City Council meeting in the last couple of years that had to do with housing in North Bay Shore. We're very interested in the impact that housing is going to have on school children in Mountain View, because with all that housing is going to come kids, and with all those kids is going to be a need for schools. So we've had continuous conversations with the City of Mountain View, council members and city manager about this. In addition, and I wish this meeting had already happened, we are very near to having a study session with the City of Mountain View regarding teacher housing that's a joint project between the City of Mountain View and the Mountain View-Whisman School District, and it is not in Cooper Park.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. Your time is up. Ms. Patterson?
With growth comes opportunities and challenges, and what we have ahead of us keeps changing. So as the other candidates mentioned, we need to stay on top of it, and that is the role of the board. It is going to be tough, it's hard work, but that is the role of the board, to make sure that this growth is really an opportunity and not a burden. It's not easy, but we need to make sure that not only are we staying on top of the growth, but also that we don't risk execution. We ultimately need to educate our children, and we need to stay disciplined to ensure that we're executing effectively.
Thank you. The next question is, what do you think the role of oversight involves? Ms. Conley, would you please answer?
I thought we rotated. We don't rotate?
You are rotating randomly.
Oh. It would be my pleasure to answer. So having spent so much time in the classroom myself, I understand how hard it is to teach, how much our students represent the hopes of their families, and that when it really comes down to it at the end of the day, we're working with individual children. We are not working with cells on an Excel spreadsheet or data points in a graph. And so oversight means holding the district accountable for children, not just data, holding the district accountable for how we are supporting families every day in their relationship with the schools and also in their opportunities beyond the school. We know that we have families that need resources outside of the school, so how can we connect them to those as well? Oversight means being accountable to everyone in our district, because if we don't, we're failing actual people, not just data.
Thank you. Ms. Patterson?
I believe that the superintendent and the school teams really need to be focused on and empowered to be accountable for how, and separating the folks that are really looking at the oversight, as the school board should, at the vision. And so there really needs to be a separation between the school steering with the school boards and superintendents focused on setting policy and direction and ensuring delivery of desired results, and the rowing, the operating schools, free from bureaucratic constraints to maximize school performance and really ensuring that our children are having the excellent education that we all want for them. And so that's the overarching governance that I believe in, and understand that we can do that at the larger level to make sure that at the lower levels we can all achieve what we want.
And Mr. Donado?
Thank you. Being on the school board has actually been an interesting experience because the way in which you operate as a school board member is a lot different than you might operate in other parts of your life. The school board has one person reporting to it, not to any one of us in particular, but to the five of us, the superintendent reports. The five of us are to set policy, set direction to the superintendent, hold people accountable, set goals. So we embarked on a strategic plan process when Dr. Rudolph arrived, and we're following that plan now. There are a lot of times when you'd like to get more involved and you'd like to say, you know, how about that teacher, or how about what happened to that student, or get into a lot of the details, but really that would be like if you're at a public company and one of the board of directors comes into your cube and asks you what you're programming that day or something. It's oversight requires the self-discipline to do as much as you can through indirect policy and guidance, and leave the rest of the execution to the team.
Thank you.
And by process of elimination?
Ms. Wheeler?
Thank you. In my opening statement, I mentioned that I'm a graduate of Santa Clara University School of Law. What I did in my law career is work in family law. And those of you who've been involved in family law know that the overarching goal in family law is the best interest of the child. And I bring that viewpoint and that philosophy to my work as a school board member. And I'm always talking to my fellow school board members and our superintendent about that, to think about the best interest for every single child in our district. And it's not just your own child or your child's best friend or the child down the block. It's every child in our school district. Now, Mr. Donado did a good job, I think, of reciting the kind of masters in government board member responsibilities, so I'm not going to continue with that.
Thank you. The next question, do you believe the new school boundaries will increase the economic disparities between schools in the district? How will these changes affect district-wide quality of education? Ms. Conley?
Bummer.
Oh, third time's the charm. So I value neighborhood schools, and I value neighborhoods and building community and being able to have a shared community with your neighborhood. I think one of the hard things is that research shows us that neighborhoods are also segregated by class and often by race, that they're segregated by income and whether or not you can afford to buy a house there. So it's kind of a lose-lose or a win-win situation. It's a very difficult problem. I think that moving forward, we have new boundaries now, and moving forward, we need to be very, very focused on making sure that at every school, regardless of whether you live in an apartment or you live in a single-family home or you don't have a home, that at every school you are getting a world-class education, and we make sure we continue to look across all of our schools, and I think that's what the school board does. We have that higher view so we can look across all of our schools and make sure that no one is getting left behind.
Thank you very much. Mr. Donado?
Thank you. So I live in what's called the Slater neighborhood. And so the neighborhood I live in, the triangle over there has been divided up into 3 different school boundaries the whole time I've lived there. And I'll tell you, the fact that one of the neighborhoods got assigned to Landals, mine is assigned to Landals, one is assigned to Huff, one's assigned to Therkoff, didn't help anybody's kids. I mean, so if people think that by getting students and just distributing them all over the place is supposed to help, I think that's a misguided policy. So when Vargas opens up in August of next year, the triangle in which I live is going to have all its family members and all its children walking to school and going to the same school together. What the district needs to do is make sure that we put the programs in place so that every student, no matter what school they're at, is able to succeed to the best of their abilities and not play games with moving kids around like they're chess pieces or something. Having communities work together to make their school better is a powerful force.
Thank you. Ms. Patterson?
I wonder if every school was achieving high test scores, would we be talking about boundaries? And so my focus is on excellence. Every school, for every student. That should be our top priority. The system needs to not fail for all of our students. And what do I mean by that? When I was in high school, I got a 92 on a chemistry exam, and I went to my parents and they said, "That was great, why didn't you get 100? So I went to my teacher and figured out what I was missing, where'd I lose the point, and he finally looked at me and said, "You know, Tamara, not everyone's a 100%er." And it was
Wow.
because, and that lit a fire for me, but it could have gone the other way. And it was because there was a system that supported a strong education for all students.
Thank you. And in a related question, oh,
Is Ms. Wheeler on your list over there?
yeah. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. So some of you may know, for the last 3 years, our school district was working very hard with a committee of community members and staff members to grapple with the work of trying to create new school boundaries, because the school board had voted to open this new school that Mr. Donado was talking about. We finally finalized that vote last year. When Jose Antonio Vargas School opens next year, August of 2019, all of the schools will have their new boundaries. And the hope is that with having neighborhood schools where children can walk and bike to school and, you know, have play dates after school with children that are nearby, and excellent teachers at every school, and an excellent school board and superintendent, will have great result
Thank you
of
very
this.
much.
Thank you.
And in a related question, Mountain VIew-Whisman has one of the largest achievement gaps in the state. What is the most important thing you would do first to try to close this gap? Ms. Patterson?
First, I think that we need to be honest about where our achievement gap is. I recently saw a study from last year that asked teachers, students, and parents, asking, how strongly do you feel that your student is going to be successful in high school? It's on track. 89% of the students said they agreed or strongly agreed. 59% of teachers said that. So there's a disconnect, and we need to start by being honest about where our kids are. Then we need to really prioritize and make this a key focus for our community to work on together.
Ms. Conley?
So the first thing that I would do to focus on the achievement gap is really look at what's happening inside of classrooms. And so at a higher level, we have this data that's come back from the state, and that information is sort of a starting point. Schools right now are working on what's called a school site plan for the year. They make one every year based on their student results, And it details how in each classroom across the school, they're going to be supporting children wherever they are, whatever their needs are. Is there someone who needs to be challenged more? Is there someone who is underperforming? But I think that that close focus on classroom instruction and supporting teachers and differentiating for students is the way we close the achievement gap. And I know that because I've lived it. I've taught in schools that are predominantly low-income students and English learners, and I've seen my students have over 1.5 years of growth in 1 year. So I think instruction is the key, and supporting our teachers is the way that we're going to do that.
Ms. Wheeler?
There's an achievement gap on the first day of kindergarten. And I think the first and best thing that we can do to close that achievement gap that's present on the first day of kindergarten is to have high-quality preschool or high-quality early childhood education as far back as we can, at least 4-year-olds. Try to go back to 3-year-olds, and the best bang for your buck is 0 to 3. If we have excellent, high-quality preschool, that achievement gap is abated. And if we continue to have the excellent instruction that Ms. Connolly was talking about, we will have excellent education and results for our students.
Thank you. Mr. Coladonado?
Thank you. Thank you. For the first few years students are in school, they learn how to read, and after that, they read to learn. And so English proficiency is, in my opinion, the biggest lever we have to help the students that are on the other side of the achievement gap. And so I've been pushing for a while, but I haven't really got enough traction on this yet, to accelerate the rate at which we try to teach English to our students. When I first said, hey, can we try to teach English a little faster? The response I got from the staff member at the time said, well, the federal guidelines say it takes 6 years. And I thought, well, okay, that's a federal guideline. We're here in Mountain View in Silicon Valley. I'd like to think that we could aim for a much higher goal than that, a much more ambitious goal. And I'd like to be, have been pushing for and will continue to push for as much English education to English learners in kindergarten and first as possible, with the goal being to convert every single one of them to a English learned status by the end of first grade. I think there's nothing we could do that would help as many students as much as that.
Thank you. The middle schools have recently adjusted their schedules to allow most students to take 2 electives. How do you intend to evaluate and support this new schedule? Especially, how would you help to maintain the opportunity for most students to take 2 electives? Mr. Coladonado?
Well, I happen to be the member of this, or the one person who's a candidate who has to deal with this schedule because I have a 6th grader at Crittenden. And so my wife and I have both been trying to memorize how this schedule works, and we are interacting with our son and his classmates about how it works. He does like having 2 electives, and so I think that it's probably looking like it was a good idea to switch to this schedule so far from the feedback I've gotten from students and at back to school night and so forth. But we did it to address a particular problem. If over the course of this year or next year we think of a better way to solve that problem or an improvement on this plan, I'd like to see us consider changing to that. This isn't supposed to be the best schedule ever conceived, but despite being kind of complicated, my son has been able to manage it, and it seems to work all right so far.
Thank you. Ms. Connolly?
So I hear about this problem a lot. Well, not problem. I hear about the change a lot that happened this year because many of my former kindergarten students from when I taught in Mountain View are now in middle school or just entering high school. So I've seen this going around, and I've been going out to PTA meetings and talking to parents and families about how it's going for their kids this year. There appear to be some kinks to work out. It is wonderful to be able to offer a broader selection of electives, but people are having trouble getting into things that will be the most supportive for them. I've also heard issues around the math courses and how students are being assigned to the math courses. And then once you're assigned to a particular math track, it really tracks which electives you can get into as well, because it matches up across the schedule. So I think we're going to need to really look at how it's playing out this year, and we might need to make adjustments mid-year, or we might need to make adjustments for the following year.
Thank you. Ms. Wheeler?
Thank you. we had another committee that examined for 2 years how to do these kinds of electives, and the initial rationale for this was because a lot of our English language learners never got an elective because their only extra class was their English language learner class. So we created this schedule where everybody gets an elective. I think that's a win. And now everybody gets 2 electives. Some people get more time on math. Some people have less time on math because they don't need more time. One thing this does, we talk about the importance of wanting children to want to come to school. Well, what we hear about these electives is that a lot of the kids just love it. They love having more electives, some shorter classes, and some diversity.
Ms. Patterson?
I think it's good that we change things. I mean, we can't keep things the same. And I do believe that our children have an amazing capacity to grow, and we're surprised by them every day as parents. And we need to stay on top of it as a board, as the school leaders that are there every day in the classroom. I'm sure there is a lot of attention to see how successful this is going to be. And you can see, not just with some of the later on data, but just in every day, how are people getting along? Does it really feel like parents are engaged and are supporting this new structure? And are we getting feedback from parents and children that seems like we're moving in the right direction? So we understand where we are and we adjust as needed.
Thank you. In light of the discussion about the new schedules, do you support moving the middle school start time to be after 8:30 as has been recommended by pediatricians? Ms. Wheeler?
Thank you for that question. The California School Boards Association opposed this not because they're opposed to later start times, but because they're opposed to one size fits all. Our school district is examining this issue. It's complicated because if you have late starts for middle schoolers, that impacts what you're going to do with elementary school students. So some of these middle school students are taking care of their younger brothers and sisters before school. So we'd probably have to move back the start time for elementary schools. I'm glad that we have some time to examine this issue and see how it's going to work.
Thank you. Ms. Patterson?
There was recently a bill on this, and it was vetoed by the governor. There is a lot of good science behind middle school and high schoolers to start later, but it doesn't make sense to have one size fits all. And understanding ourselves, how can we benefit our community and result in higher achievement for our students?
Thank you. Mr. Donato?
Not to throw my 6th grader under the school bus, but he has the hardest time waking up to get to his 8:05 start. And and if he's going to bike, which he does sometimes, he has to leave the house at 7:20, which is just kind of early. It's a little too early, I think, for him. So I think I'd support this. If this came before the board, I'd probably support an 8:30 start. For what it's worth, I'd support it for high school too, and I'd have them do marching band after school instead of at 7 a.m. when.
Lights?
Yeah, I support the lights as well. Yeah, so I think that it would be watching my own children staying up and seeing how hard it is to get them to sleep at this age. I think it would help if they got to start school at 8:30. They just went a little bit later in the afternoon.
Thank you. Ms. Conley?
Thank you. So I believe in science, and I think that using facts to inform policy is a good thing. So teenagers, middle schoolers and high schoolers, their circadian rhythm, they have trouble going to bed until 11 o'clock at night no matter what we do. And they're not getting the sleep that they need to really thrive and be successful. I had a brief stint teaching 8th grade chemistry, and I tell you what, it made a huge difference when I got kids later in the day or especially if they had like a free period in the morning so they didn't actually have to come in during that period. So I think that there's an opportunity to look at creative solutions. I know this has large impacts on families across the district with multiple children, but when it comes down to it, it's about the well-being of our kids. And if they're sleep deprived, they're going to have a lot of difficulty learning, and even their social emotional development is going to suffer. So I think this is an opportunity to look at something different, possibly.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question. We always hear our students are not ready for high school. What are your plans to ensure each student is ready for high school? Ms. Conley.
Well, this goes back to my focus on the quality of our instruction and what's happening inside of classrooms. So what do students need to be prepared for high school? Where are the gaps right now? And how do we make sure that those gaps don't continue? What we saw in our data that's come back from the state level is that we're really struggling in math as students go into middle school. The 4th and 5th graders are having a hard time, and they're not getting the fundamental concepts that they need when they enter middle school. And if you're already behind in middle school, how are you going to be prepared for high school? So we need to drill down and focus on what's happening in classrooms and make sure that we are filling those gaps and giving kids the prerequisite skills they need just entering middle school, and then build on that to prepare them for high school.
Thank you. Mr. Donado.
It is good news that in the recent past, the superintendents of our 3 districts in this area, the Mountain VIew-Whisman School District, the Los Altos School District, and the Mountain View Los Altos High School District, have been meeting on this topic and working on ways to harmonize between the programs we have, the curricula that we use, the curricula they use, and how to smooth the transition from one system to the next. But on top of that, I would add that some of the students that have the hardest time making it in high school are these students we've had since kindergarten, and now they're in 8th grade. They're still learning English, and when they get to high school, it doesn't go well. And so that goes back to what I think it should be our main new initiative, in addition to science curriculum, a much accelerated English training program. But I would add that for anyone who thinks that harmonizing between our district and the high school district is the biggest problem, they should probably advocate for combining these 3 districts into one, like Palo Alto, where they just have one city that has one school district that takes care of the kids from kindergarten to the end of high school.
Thank you. Ms. Patterson.
I want to reiterate that I really believe that the school board's role is to set the vision and the direction and focus on the what, and allowing and supporting the superintendent and the school staff to figure out how to solve this challenging problem, and really recognize that they are the ones in the classroom that are going to be trying to solve this day in and day out. So I've seen in my professional career over a decade and a half of really tackling hard problems by 4 aspects, starting with a team that's collaborating and cohesive and really moving in the same direction. Second, prioritizing and making sure there's 3, at most 5 priorities, and that includes saying what you're not going to do. 3, asking good questions, critically, creatively. And 4, learning and iterating from them.
Thank you. Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you. I think that's the question was one of those statements that you hear that I think is an old-fashioned idea. My own experience with my own child, who went from Bub to Graham to Mountain View to UC Berkeley and then to a job, is that most of the children at Graham were well prepared for Mountain View High School, and most of the children in Crittenden are well prepared for Los Altos High School. We definitely, like Mr. Donado said, want to continue to collaborate with all 3, have all 3 school districts work together, but things are not as bad as you may be thinking. A lot of our kids are doing really well.
Thank you. Thank you. The Mountain View community has become both ethnically and economically diverse. The needs of our Spanish-speaking families, which you have been alluding to, are difficult. How can we be inclusive and welcome them? Ms. Patterson.
Like I've said before, our system needs to not fail our children. We need to value all parents and all families and start there. We need to be honest with them and see where everyone is. There's a similarity with Congress. If you ask someone, is your congressman doing well? And you say, yes. Is Congress doing well? So we need to start by being honest with where our kids are and having an open dialogue to be able to provide resources for our kids and our families and really bring them into the conversation, have them be a partner in their child's education.
Thank you. Ms. Connolly.
I'm going to see if I can squeeze this story into 1 minute. So when I first started teaching, one of my students, who I'm going to call Anthony, had just come here from Guatemala. His family was fleeing social unrest. And he was quiet and shy in the classroom because he was just learning English. And I went to visit his home where his mother and his father and his baby brother lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 other families. And they were so relieved to be in a safe place and in a place where they felt there was opportunity for their children. And they were so hopeful about school. So every day this little boy came to my classroom filled with hope of his family. And that is why I have stayed in education, because I believe that all of the children in our community from everywhere deserve a high-quality education, and they're all the hopes and dreams of their families. So we need to focus on that. We need to make sure families aren't afraid, and then also make sure that we're serving those students.
Thank you. Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you. So one of the joys of being a school board member is being able to go to all of our schools and seeing on the ground how the kids are doing, what the teachers are doing, what the principals are doing. I know we've got a principal in this room right now. We've got some teachers in the room right now. We've got former teachers in the room. One of the things that's great about Mountain View, and the reason that we love living here, is we love the diversity of Mountain View. We love the diversity in all of our schools. Our children in the diverse schools are doing better and better every year. We've made, like almost 10 points of improvement in test scores among low-income and Spanish-speaking students. And I see the efforts and the work that our staff is doing to make those scores improve. So I think good things are happening.
Thank you. Mr. Donado.
Thank you. I'd like to just speak briefly about some of the things the school board's been doing in this direction that I'm totally supportive of. Since I've been on the board, administration has hired school engagement coordinators at all of our schools. These are people whose full-time job is to do what the question addressed, which was how can we, connect with these families and help them connect to school. So I think that has helped. Another thing is we've passed a number of resolutions since November 2016 about relating to how school is to be a safe place for students. And so, whether it's not not collecting information like this or not telling these people about that, we have tried to send the message that school should be safe, like the Guatemalan student that Ms. Conley mentioned. I'd like to also just point out that another joy of being on the school board is getting invited to the PK graduation. This is a Spanish-speaking parent education program that happens every year, and I go to graduation at that every year, and Jose in the back spoke once.
Thank you.
And
Your time is
it was
up.
good.
What are your out-of-the-box ideas for teacher retention that do not include housing? Mr. Coladonado. Mr. Coladonado, please.
Well, I am proud to admit that one out-of-the-box solution of mine for this problem was actually adopted, not this year, but the year before. Usually the school board and the union negotiate over what percentage increase every teacher is going to get, over their last year's salary. That year, I proposed, can we get the number we would give to everybody, give that to the teachers in the middle, give a higher percentage increase to teachers that are at the start of their career, and balance that out with a slightly lower percentage increase to teachers that are in the highest paid, highest paid bracket. The effect of this was to add a couple thousand extra dollars to the starting teacher's salary. I didn't know, I thought it might not go over well when it came time for the union to look at this proposal, but it was approved, and I'd like to see it done again. We didn't do it this last year, but I'd like to see it done next year as well, so that we can catch up starting teachers somewhat so they can live here.
Thank you. Ms. Wheeler?
Well, I was laughing because we hear everywhere that housing is a huge issue, housing and transportation. So it's hard for me to think about ways to retain teachers that don't involve housing and transportation. We have teachers in our school district who commute 2 hours a day to get to our schools. And we have teachers who cannot find an affordable place to live in our school district. So I think our soon-to-be unveiled plan of large teacher housing unit for low to moderate priced units for teachers and support staff, that is a huge deal. It is an out-of-the-box thinking idea, and when people learn about it all over the state, they're going to be envious of us.
Thank you. Ms. Conley?
All right, so I'm going to go really pie in the sky on this one. I think something that's really difficult about teaching is there's not a lot of flexibility. So as an example, when I was pregnant with my son in my 3rd trimester, school started, and I was teaching every day, and I needed to go to the bathroom, but I could not leave my classroom to go to the bathroom. So I had a urinary tract infection for 3 months while I was pregnant, and I had to take antibiotics, which can lead to preterm delivery. There are not many jobs where that happens. And teaching is a place where you can't even go to the bathroom if you have to go to the bathroom. So I think there are opportunities to improve the working conditions of teachers that make it a more sustainable job. We lose 1 in 3 teachers by their 7th year of teaching, and housing, transportation, all of these other things, salaries play into that, but it's also just incredibly difficult and a very rigid structure.
Thank you. Ms. Patterson?
We need to honor our teachers as a community. I hope that's not too out of the box, but I really believe that research and my experience shows that the greatest pull to keep a good employee is culture. Are we honoring our teachers? Do we respect their expertise? Are we giving them room to grow? Are we doing everything possible to keep them and be effective? I know a 3rd grade teacher that was crowdsourcing in order to fund for school supplies this year. Where is that in the job description? We need to be able to support and honor our teachers as a community.
Thank you. The next question is a little all-inclusive. What is your view of the role of the board, and how would you work to improve the effectiveness of the board? Ms. Wheeler?
Thank you. That's a real nuts and bolts question, and it's not very exciting, but it's the most important thing that a school board member does. It's important for the board to be able to work together as a team. There's a term that we use in school board world called leadership team, and that's the 5 members of the school board working together with the superintendent. We can get a lot done when we work together. So that's one of the main things that we try to do in our school district. Another thing is there's something called professional development for teachers. There's also professional development for school board members. And many of us on our board and our superintendent have taken that kind of training, and we've learned how to not invent things from scratch. We work together using ways that we respect.
Ms. Patterson?
I've mentioned before that I do view the role of the board as setting the strategic vision and the what, and allowing the superintendent and the school staff to figure out how. They are the experts. I don't have the answers to a lot of how something should be done. I don't know anyone does. It's our educators who are in the classroom every day that know how they need to solve challenges in their classroom. And then it's the board to help get other things out of the way, answer questions that might be challenging them, and think about risks or plan B, C, and D to make sure that we're all successful in educating our kids.
Thank you. Mr. Donado.
Thank you. So as Trustee Wheeler alluded to, there's a program that elected trustees are often bombarded with advertisements to attend. Like one of them is called Masters in Governance. I have taken it's a 5-course series. When you take this, you learn about all different aspects of being a public official, at least in the school board realm. And so I encourage anybody who gets elected this term, if they haven't done this, to do this. I encourage our existing board members who haven't done it to try to do it. That is basically skill building in the basic parts. There's one on negotiations, there's one on hiring and other sorts of things. Another thing the board can do to be more effective is rotate board members through different leadership roles. We have 3 roles on the board: a clerk, vice president, and president. Each has a slightly different role to play, and giving each person a chance to be in each of those roles gives them a broader, more multifaceted understanding of what it means to be on the board and how to have the board operate effectively.
Thank you. Ms. Conley.
So I believe the role of the board is to be the voice of our constituents and the voice of the families in our district. And that means that we are accountable to everyone who votes or can't vote. We are accountable to parents. We are accountable to children. And our job is to hold the district accountable in turn. That is why we are there in those seats. Now, I may not have all of the answers on the nitty-gritty and everything that needs to happen, but I have the expertise and the background from years in research and years in the classroom to ask the right questions and to really push on how are we setting policies that support all of our students.
Thank you. The next question is, how will you improve trust between the board and the community? And how can the board improve transparency? Ms. Conley.
I don't even have time to write the question down. So something that's really important in board meetings, which is the public venue where constituents can see what's going on in the decision-making at these upper levels for our district, is that we're really clear and honest about what our goals are for different programs, whether or not we have met those goals, how much we have met or failed them by, and what our next steps will be. And I think it's very tempting to say, look, everything's okay, we're doing really well overall. I do think there have been some positive changes in the last years, especially at the board level. But if we are not closely documenting and being open about our challenges and how we are meeting or failing to solve those problems, we are not going to be successful for all of our children.
Thank you. Mr. Donado.
I think that trust would be best built if there were more opportunities for the 5 board members to interact with teachers, parents, students, community members, outside of those stodgy board meetings where it's, I remember before I was elected and I would go up to that podium to have something to say. It was, it was scary. It was not that welcoming. And I applaud every member of the community who comes up to that podium to say something. But our superintendent has cafecitos, which are, we bring a Spanish translator to. He has other times when he meets with parents, and English is the venue. And our supervisor sends things in the mail you probably all get. You can go talk to Joe Simidian at like the farmer's market. I think that if the board were available, we've never really had a program like this, but if the board were available in an informal setting and people could come and either share ideas or gripes or whatever, I think it'd build trust. I'd like to do that.
Ms. Patterson.
I believe you build trust every day by everyday actions. I spoke to a mom who had received an email about vaccinations, and it was bold and red and underlined, and it said, you need to do it by this date. What if we go one step farther to say, here's a clinic, here are the hours, here's a number that you can use to help answer and solve this challenge that you have. That's partnering together, that's being proactive, and it's an everyday kind of thing that you will build that trust between the district and the community.
Thank you. Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you. I said in my opening remarks that I meet with every school board, every community member, every parent, every teacher, every staff member who asks me. I have met with hundreds of people, for coffees or lunch or walks over the last couple years. And what I can tell you is that every school board member is willing to do that. The way you reach us is at trustees@mvwsd.org. I know that we are all happy to hear from people. Another thing we did a couple years ago, and we take it for granted now, is that we video all of our meetings. Not all school boards in the county video their meetings. So people can watch our meetings at home with popcorn or later on with popcorn. And additionally, we publish all of our information and in Spanish.
Thank you. What is your position on charter schools? What is your view of Bullis Charter School coming into this school district? Ms. Patterson.
I think the largest concern I have in my community is closing the achievement gap. I am interested in any model, whether it's traditional or charter, that can help accomplish that goal. If charters are able to close the achievement gap, then that would be a big improvement for our community. So I commit to being open-minded and transparent and will be fiscally responsible with our public dollars. As I've mentioned, I value diversity, and if Bullis does come to Mountain View, as they've planned, I'd hold their feet to the fire about serving our low-income and English language learning community. Exactly how are they going to attract and retain those families?
Thank you. Ms. Conley.
So I tend to get a little wonky about questions like this because I like policy. So what happens is that Bullis is going to come to the district to get their charter approved. And if the district says no, then they'll go to the county to get their charter approved. And they're probably going to be successful at the county level because they've been successful there before and because there are a lot of people in Mountain View who have signed on to the petition to have that happen. So I don't think the question before us is, will Bullis have a school in Mountain View or not? I think the question is, what is the district's role going to be when there is a charter school in Mountain View? And if we take it on, we could be the ones that Bullis is responsible to. We would be the ones holding Bullis accountable for the outcome of all children. If they go to the county level, we have no say over what happens.
Thank you. Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you. I just mentioned we video all of our school board meetings. At our last school board meeting, we had a 90-minute agenda item where we had an attorney who's an expert on charter school law come and give a really good tutorial to the school board members about what are charter schools and what is charter school law, what are our options, under a charter school. I recommend any of you who are interested in this issue go to mvwsd.org, go up to school board members and find that board meeting. It starts around 7:30 or so, and you'll learn a lot. And one of them is, just like Ms. Conley was saying, charter schools are legal, and the best thing we can do is try to figure out how we can interact with them.
Thank you. Mr. Donado.
Thank you. I'd like to say that I agree with what Ms. Patterson said, that I care about results, and if a school gets results, I don't care what kind of program it runs. I want the students in it to be succeeding, and if a different program is what's required for some students to succeed, then I want to have that program. And I agree with Ms. Connolly. The way the presentation went that Ms. Wheeler's alluding to made it sound like that school is going to open in this district in August of 2019, and if we'd like to have any influence over it, we would have to be the approver for the charter, not the rejecter of the charter. And so I hope it goes well, since it doesn't look like we have much choice in whether it's going to be here or not.
Thank you. Tell us about the process you use to research issues facing the board. Include something you learned while studying an issue that affected your thinking. Ms. Wheeler.
That's an interesting question. I mentioned again in my opening statement that I read about education every day. So I know, and I'm a teacher, I have a past experience as a teacher. I know a lot about education, but when something comes before us, what we get is background materials, and I read all the background materials. I have a lot of background knowledge about what the background materials are telling me. You know, Ms. Connolly talked about being wonky. I have been accused of being wonky my whole life, and I own up to it. I study things really hard, and have I changed my mind by something that I studied? I have an open mind on everything. So I have an open mind about agenda items. I have an open mind about things that are coming before us.
Thank you. Ms. Patterson.
I bring a fresh perspective to education and our educational space. And so that allows me to think openly about what policies or what issues are at hand. And so I start, maybe it's because of the science and engineering, but what do I know? What basics do I know? What laws are there? What is in place today? And who is affected? Who are all the stakeholders that we have, and what are their opinions? So the process involves not just understanding the foundation and the basics, but also questioning it at the same time.
Thank you. Mr. Donado.
Thank you. One, since this is kind of asking for a for instance that comes to my mind, for a number of years, the school district, the superintendent and the board of that time did not believe that a school should be open in the northeast part of Mountain View. And one of the ways that this argument was supported in board meetings was demographers would come with information about all the developments being built and how many students were going to be generated from each one. There was a 59 townhome development near my house that was computed to yield 4 students. And so I went out. After I got home from work, I went around that development and knocked on doors and introduced myself as a board member and asked if they had any students or if they were going to have students. And by the time I got to the 7th house, I'd found 7 kids. And so there's sometimes you get information that's kind of like gathered by a spreadsheet or an internet search somewhere. And it's helpful to go, if there's a way to get ground truth, get facts, to go get them. It's not the sort of thing you do every day, but for the important stuff you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Conley.
So this is where my background as an educator and as an education policy researcher is particularly helpful. I've served as the school board observer for the League of Women Voters for the last year. I've attended or streamed every single meeting, and I've written at least bi-monthly reports. So I've been doing this. I've been looking for research sources online, the data, the information at the state level. How is that affecting the policies that we're doing? How are the choices we're making impacting our students? And I love to pair that kind of high-level data analysis, ability to do research or find research and understand research with my experience working directly with children and families. So I'm very involved in my local community. I'm the vice president of our neighborhood association. I'm always out and about trying to connect with people. I'm on our executive board at our PTA. I think those two dual aspects make me very good at analyzing board decisions.
Thank you. What is your main goal to improve the district? Mr. Donado.
What is my main goal?
Your main goal to improve the district.
Okay. My primary idea for improving the district comes back to that same one I already talked about. When someone goes to great schools and they look up our different schools in our district, and some of them are red or yellow, the reason that's the case is because there's a lot of students in those schools that don't speak English very well, and as a result don't do well in school. I do not believe there's anything we could do that would have a bigger effect than thinking outside the box. You know, when I've proposed, can we do more with English language education, I hear, well, the contract doesn't allow any teaching after school hours. You know, it's limited to 181 days. We can't do Saturday. There's so many no's. What we need to do, the big goal would be find out a way to get yeses for things that we could do that we're not doing, that other school districts in California or other parts of the country figure out a way to do, but we have not figured out how to break through and do. I'd like to see much more ambitious English education done in our district, and I think that would turn all our schools green.
Thank you. Ms. Wheeler.
The first time I ran for school board, I said I was interested in academic excellence for every child in the district. And I've looked at my materials every time I've run, and that's my number 1 goal, and you can look at it out there on my flyer. I'm interested in academic excellence for every single child in our district. That means hiring the best teachers we can, paying the best salaries that we can, having lots of support staff, just like Mr. Donado was talking about. These school and community engagement facilitators make a big difference. We have intervention specialists at our schools. We have mental health counselors at our schools. We have CHAC. We have Project Cornerstone. We have Mountain View Education Foundation providing enriching activities that is outside of the academic day. So I would say educate for the whole child, but academic excellence.
Ms. Conley.
Thank you.
So again, I'm going to focus on this dual background of research and teaching. We have seen stagnant test results for our English learners in the district over the last couple of years. We made some good improvements about 4 years ago, but that coincided with a change in our student population, where we actually had fewer English learners. And so something that we need to do, and that I really want to focus on, is paying close attention to all of the students, including those English learners in particular, in the classroom, and supporting teachers in their daily instruction so that they can differentiate and make sure that each individual child is getting what they need, that it's not just reading from a scripted curriculum every day. It's, I know this person needs this, I know that this child has scored at 90% on every test we've had, and I need to give them extra challenge. I know that this child has been in the middle of the road, but they are capable of so much more.
Thank you. Ms. Patterson.
My main goal would be to have our kids love learning and learn to work hard. Specifically, if you hold my feet to the fire, it is K-3 reading. And this is where our supplemental dollars and our focus and attention should be. Because, as Greg mentioned before, it does enable so much more. And so when we have successful programs within our district, identify them, support them. There was a very successful summer program this year that looked at an integrated approach at science, where the kids were wearing lab coats and working on science projects, but also their writing and their reading, being able to make it interesting for our kids to be excited at school.
Thank you. All right, for the last question before you do your closing statement, this is your chance to brag. What makes you a great candidate for the Mountain VIew-Whisman School District Board? Ms. Wheeler.
The first time I ran for school board, I said, as a retired teacher, attorney, mediator, active volunteer, and mom, I believe I'm uniquely qualified to serve as your school board member. All of those attributes are still true today, and now I have 16 years of experience. I am someone who believes deeply in experience, good experience working with people who are succeeding as employees in our school district. So I think I'm the most qualified candidate up here, and I hope I have your vote.
Thank you. Ms. Patterson.
I bring a fresh perspective that will accept nothing less than academic excellence for all. As a parent with 3 young kids, our family is going to be directly involved in public schools for the next 18 years. And as the brown kid in almost all of my elementary, middle school, and high school classes, and a female in the sciences, I bring an awareness and a perspective of being a minority and a woman and having to speak up. Professionally, as a product manager, I'm responsible for listening and understanding the needs of my community and delivering results that solve their true needs. I am not an education expert, but I'm looking at these hard problems from the lens of someone that stays focused on priorities and makes decisions based on where I see results. A fresh voice is a good thing because these are hard problems and we need to look at them differently and creatively. Research and my experience has demonstrated that the best outcomes come from a diverse team.
Thank you. Mr. Donado.
Thank you. I think that being a current parent and experiencing what our schools are doing at these different levels every day brings something to the table. I'm glad when I ran for the board, there were no board members that had students in the district. That's not the case anymore. I don't think that means you should get rid of me, but I think it's still a good thing that I have students in the district. Another thing that I think is valuable, the first year or 2 or 3 years on the board, as a board member, you're trying to influence the superintendent, you're trying to influence policy, the union contract, other things, and you find out that it's not very easy to be one person who has to persuade 2 others to, in this body to act within these meetings that happen every 2 weeks. So there's something to getting good at this job, and I think I've gotten better at it over the last 4 years. And I hope that other earlier answers show that I not only think of things that come outside, that are outside the box, but have the ability over these years to get some of them implemented, and I like to do more of those.
Thank you. Ms. Conley.
So I have dedicated my career to strengthening public schools and our community. And some of the ways I've done that, I'm the vice chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission in Mountain View, where I advocate for students and children and families all the time. I'm the vice president of our neighborhood association. I have experience teaching full-time in the classroom. I have experience in education policy research. But I also still have my hand in the classroom. I was teaching science yesterday in the Ravenswood School District and all day today in Redwood City. So I know what it's like on the ground. And I have a child who's just entered the district. He's in kindergarten. We're going to be in the district for 9 more years. I've got skin in the game. And I think it's a great opportunity to make sure that it's not, I don't care just about my child. I care about all of the children in our community, and I want to take this opportunity to better support them.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone in the audience for your great questions. This was I think, a very wide-ranging set of things for our candidates to discuss, which gave them an opportunity to present their best side and their best ideas to you so that you will be able to make informed decisions about who to vote for. I now give the floor back to the candidates for their 2-minute closing statements, and we will go in reverse order of how we did the opening statements. So that's Mr. Donado will go first.
Thank you. Okay, I'm thankful to the League of Women Voters. I've been to many League of Women Voters events. I always enjoy them, whichever side of the table I'm on. I'm glad so many people are in the audience and care and come. I'm glad so many candidates are in this election. For a number of years, Mountain View had uncontested elections where if you wanted to be on the board, you put your name in and you got to be on the board. That was 2010, 2008, 2006. So a district where the people care about their schools a lot will have contested elections, and I'm glad we have one here. I'm glad that the candidates are of such high quality. You heard we didn't hear my degrees, but you heard all their degrees. They're impressive. They are well educated and well qualified for the board. So I'm glad that whichever two people of the four of us get elected, you're gonna have two great board members. So that is a good thing. Speaking on my own behalf, I got to communicate some of the things I'm interested in pursuing as a board member in three areas: students, staff, and schools. For students, I'll just reiterate, one of my main goals is to improve our English language education. I also mentioned in February I proposed improving our science, technology, and engineering programs to be at least as good as the neighboring ones over in Los Altos. I think we can do that, and I'd like to be on the board that pushes that through and has high expectations for staff to follow through on that direction. As far as staff goes, I'd like to see us doing whatever we can to have our starting teachers be the best paid in the county. There's nothing we can do to have, the most important thing for our students is to have the best possible teacher in front of them that has time to teach them. I'd like to, and the most influence we have over that is who we hire. So if we can hire the best possible teachers every time there's an opening, we'll be doing the best we can do for our students. And of course, I'd like to see the school in the northeast part of town opened up in August. So thank you very much.
Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you. So I'd like to start by thanking the League of Women Voters of Los Altos Mountain View area, the Mountain View Public Library, and AAUW for putting on this forum. I'd like to thank all of us for participating in it, and I'd like to thank all of you for coming out tonight. Since I've been given a few more minutes, I'd like to publicly thank my endorsers who put their names out in a very public way, in public, to recommend me. I'll list some of them now. Juan Aranda, Lynn Alvarado, Bruce Barcy, Laura Cassis, Pearl Chang, Jim Cochran, Marilu Delgado, Kieran Gonzalez, Gay Kraus, Grace Ma, John McAllister, Olga Mello, Joe Mitchner, Lucas Ramirez, Nan Recker, Mark Ruzone, Fiona Walter, and Eleanor Yick. To see a more complete list, go to my webpage, ellenforschoolboard.com. I'll close by saying this. I've described the progress of our school district while I've been on the board. Of course, we still have more work to do. With my experience, skills, and passion, I believe I'm the one you want for this job, and I ask you for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Conley.
I also want to thank the community organizations that have put together this event tonight. It really matters that we are put to the test and have to respond to questions from the community. It's a tiny little window into what the rest of the job is going to be like on the board. It starts now. We are accountable. We are the voices of the families and the constituents in our district and our community. I have dedicated my career to this work, and I believe that I will bring added depth to our school board. It's great to have a diversity of opinions. It's wonderful to have a diversity of backgrounds and perspectives, and I think that someone who is currently teaching, has taught, and has research experience will only benefit our team as a whole. I will fight for every child in our district because I don't see children as data points, even though I'm very comfortable with data. I see children as these small, willful, joyful, stubborn, silly, exasperating, and magical creatures who walk into a classroom every day and spend 8 hours or more with one individual teacher who has a huge impact on their lives. Thank you for coming out tonight. And as I said in my opening statement, please, please vote on November 6th, regardless of who you vote for. This is a really crucial election, and we need to turn out everyone we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Patterson.
I also want to thank everyone for coming. and your civic engagement as well. I commit to being a fresh voice for our community and will accept nothing less than academic excellence for all. Speaking up is what I do day in and day out as a product manager and customer advocate. I differentiate because I'm a fresh voice in education. I have over a decade and a half of experience in delivering value, measuring results, and iterating to keep improving. Managing stakeholders, communicating effectively, staying focused on priorities, and getting things done even when the problem is big and hairy and difficult is all in my wheelhouse, just in a business setting. I do think people are people, and I think that these skills transfer well. I understand that sometimes things can be slow, but my experience in healthcare and utilities means that we can still get things done. If we expect it will be slow, then it will be. As a certified project manager, I know about understanding the critical path and working in parallel. And it's big and complex, but that doesn't mean that we should stop trying to improve. We have to. It's so important. Just look in any child's eyes. As a board member, we do need to steer and not row and empower our professional educators to do the hard work that they're doing. And so important work, as my mother-in-law and teacher of 20 years has done day in and day out. I believe in diversity, excellence, and community, and I want our children to love learning and learn to work hard, and I would be honored for your vote.
Thank you. This concludes our forum. I would like to thank the candidates for their eager participation and the depth and breadth of the answers that they gave. I would also like to thank all of the volunteers who have made this forum possible. This forum has been designed to impart information to you, the voter, in accordance with our belief that a democratic government depends on the informed and active participation of all of its citizens. We hope that you have gained insights through this forum and will aid you in making your decision. For more voter information, you can visit the Smart Voter website at smartvoter.org. Okay? Excuse me. Voter's Edge is the new one. And please vote on November 6th, or before if you were getting your vote by mail, but make sure that you do vote and help make our democracy work. Thank you all.
Thank you.